السبيل.
Humanity sets the agenda.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Very warm welcome this very lovely Thursday morning with myself, Nafisa Dango, on the mid-morning show. And it's definitely going to be a bumper morning. So we're asking you to go and grab a nice cool drink since it's very hot out there. And just relax and get enticed into, should we say, better spaces and places, as I say every week. And we have some really interesting topics that we're going to be discussing that I think are very relative in educating you into a better quality of life. So I think it's imperative that you do join us this morning on the show and get enticed to be able to reach those goals that you want and moving yourself into a positive space. So a warm welcome. But before we carry on, there's something that I read on Fearless Motivation this morning that I thought would give you some form of inspiration before we get into the show itself. And it says 6 months of hardcore focus and alignment can put you 5 years ahead in life. Don't underestimate the power of consistency and desire. You have what it takes to become the best you can be. Don't ever doubt yourself. Harness your power. Exceed your expectations. And I think that's what it's about, is looking at yourself and in a very positive way, and learning and growing for the types of failures that we encounter in our lives, and saying that, you know, this is what I've learned from it and this is how I can grow. And of course, learn from that and ask yourself, how is it that I can better myself from what I've done? Maybe that's, you know, it's steering us onto the right path and showing us the right way. So that's what we're going to be doing today, is giving you lots of relative information with regard to moving yourself into a better direction as far as your everyday, should we say, relative subjects are concerned. So let me give you a breakdown of what you can expect on today's show. We're going to be starting off with the anthology Taxi Through Mzansi, and we're going to be speaking to author Muhammed, Rahiman, and Imraan Garnie, and they're going to give us insight into their contribution to this quirky anthology. It's a very interesting book, I must tell you. They talk about relative topics and some of them use wit for it. So it gets you thinking and it gets you enticed through narrative. And then we're going to be speaking to Busi Celesio. They're going to talk to us about how to cope with financial anxiety and more money tips from this particular financial expert. She is a financial advisor. But you know, the thing is, we need to understand that we're going through a very difficult period at this moment in time. And this is something that's going to help us maybe understand how to deal with the type of situation that we're in and move ourselves into a better place. And then after that, we can expect something exciting. So stay with us. We're going to be back with you shortly, and then we're going to be in conversation with Imraan Garnie about his contribution towards the book.
Speak volumes with just one glare. We know what it's like to be at ground zero, with food essentials, clothing and blankets, fresh water portal trucks, and even on-site navigators. We use every cent to better their tomorrow. Become part of our journey to bring relief to all. Go to www.ashrafulaid.org or call us on 011-809-8181. Ashraful Aid, under the auspices of Maulana Suhail Wadi.
These days, I'm more health conscious than ever. So tonight, it's stir fry for dinner, cooked in healthy Helios pure sunflower cooking oil. Helios is pure sunflower goodness, packed with omega-6. That's good for your heart, and is approved as part of the Heart and Stroke Foundation eating plan.
Dinner's ready!
Helios, pure sunflower cooking oil. A healthy family is a happy one.
Africa.
Did you know a sponsored water well and borehole allows children to go back to school, empowers communities, and is a means of sadaqah jariyah? There are many villages in Africa and Afghanistan that are in need of water wells and boreholes. Sponsor a water well in Africa at 14,500 rand, or a borehole in Africa and Afghanistan at 49,500 rand. Call Africa Muslims Agency on 011 834 8685. Donate at Africa Muslims Agency. .co.za. Africa Muslims Agency, inspiring the spirit of giving.
Babu, why don't you loosen your belt a bit more?
But why now?
Well, it's very tight, blocking air to your brain.
Haju, this is only a start. I need to tighten up a bit more. Funds are tight and the cost of living is high.
Funds are not tight. It's your haram insurance which is tightening our barakat.
Okay, Haju. I will call my insurance friend tomorrow.
Maybe I must tighten up on my cooking from now on too.
No, Haju, we don't need to tighten up. It's okay. Look, I'm even throwing away my belt.
Don't tighten your belt. Change your insurance. Leaving Riba Insurance is easier than you think. Call Amana IFS for all your personal and commercial takaful needs. 0861 786 393. Amana. Leave Riba for good. Amana IFS is a registered financial services provider.
I've been waiting.
Gift of the Needy is working tirelessly to bring relief and hope to families burdened by poverty and distress. Our ongoing projects include aid to those affected and infected by COVID-19. Donate now. Standard Bank, Gift of the Needy, Zakah account 272-327-654. Visit our website on www.giftoftheneedy.com. Call 031-271-3102. Gift of the Needy, bringing ease to those in need.
Listen to something fresh. Listen to Salam Media.
Welcome back to the mid-morning show with myself, Nafisa Dango, and we're definitely talking something really interesting this morning. I'm going to be speaking to one of the authors of the book Taxi Through Mzansi. It's proudly South African. There's 20 writers there, and each one has contributed in their own way about relative stories. And I think as South Africans, we ourselves will be able to relate to these stories, but also learn something through narrative. Let me tell you about our author. His name is Imraan Garnie. He's a seasoned technologist, a father of 3, and a lyrical addict who writes short stories, poetry, and limericks in his spare time. His quirky take on life, inspired by his curiously unconventional life experiences, lead to twists of humor and tales that are always entertaining. And that's what we're looking forward to chatting to him about. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. A very warm welcome this morning to the show. And thank you for joining us on, should we say, enticing us to get a hold of our hands on the book, Taxi Through Mzansi. Talk to us a little bit about yourself, Imraan. Thank you for joining me.
Alaikum salam. Thank you for having me. Obviously, my name is Imraan Garnie. I'm an experienced IT manager. Writing is something that I do on my spare time. It's something that I'm very passionate about. It's something that I love doing. I'm glad that Media Inc. gave me the opportunity to do a submission into their lovely book, and I'm proud of what they've achieved, and I'm proud of what I've achieved myself as well.
Let's talk about your version of the story and what enticed you to choose that particular version of it. What was it that you wanted your audience or your reader to get from it?
I think the story that I wrote, I've actually got 2 submissions into Taxi Through Mzansi. The one I'd like to touch upon today is a short story called Anarchy. And Anarchy is based around the riots and civil unrest that took place during the month of July in 2021. And it impacted every person in a different way. And I think with my experience was particularly unique in the sense that I was actually traveling through South Africa by road whilst this was taking place. And it was and I had the kids in the car, and it was the most horrific experience ever. And I decided to take that experience and mold it into something different and something unique, but at the same time to get across the message of what it felt like to be in those circumstances at that moment and see people change in front of you. It was life altering.
I'm sure also very traumatizing and something that you didn't expect to anticipate to see. I mean, we live in a beautiful country, but you know, the riots had gotten everybody really into a very different space. And I agree with you. And I'm glad that this particular piece had enticed you to write something. What do you think was the main message of your particular piece that you contributed towards?
I'm sorry, you cut off there, Nafisa. Can you just repeat, please?
Sure. As I was saying, this piece is very interesting because, like you were saying, we're talking about the riots and what had happened and, should we say the trauma that people were experiencing, because it was something that was never experienced on this particular type of level. How did it affect you? And was that the ideology of you going back to say that I need to write something, and the message and connotation behind what you wrote?
Yes, definitely. The impact that a situation like this has on adults and us as members of society is one thing, but I had kids in the car with me, and the impact they were having, or the effect that it had on them whilst traveling through the country, I could see it on their face. As much as I was nervous and cautious and started to become all paranoid and things like that, the impact that it had on the children, it was eye-opening. And the story that I write, or the story that I wrote and submitted for this anthology, was basically to give a glimpse of for the public to see through somebody else's eye, the view of what it's like to be in the midst of this and have your life shaken up and have your world turned upside down just by the riots and environment, something you have no control over, something you can't stop, or you can't prevent, or you can't, you have no control over it, and you feel totally helpless. And in the midst of that, there's always hope, and there's always stars and people that rise above the environment around them.
I so agree with you. And I think possibly the angle that you were looking at taking was the fact that you could basically make people understand that, with this, irrespective of the type of situation we were facing, still, as South Africans, and this is what I love, is everybody still comes together to be able to create those support structures and try and help each other through that, should we say, very traumatic and difficult period.
For sure. The essence of Mzansi and being South African means that although there might be some bad elements in the environment around you, there are always those shining stars that rise above, that reach out a hand and can be there for you, even if it's a stranger. It doesn't have to be somebody you know or somebody who you're acquainted with. It can be an absolute stranger who will reach out to you.
Sure. Imraan, what would you say is that the main essence of your story? What was it that you wanted people to understand? Was it the Ubuntu? Was it the support structures? What sort of message did you want to actually get out there through your narrative?
I think the main thing, or the main point that I wanted to make, was that during the riots, there was the emphasis of defined racial lines and a separation between the races. And I wanted to say, the point I wanted to make across was, I don't think those lines define us, especially when we have the overwhelming, or the most important factor in our lives is that we are South African and we united under that banner of being South African. So it doesn't matter your race. Those lines become blur when in a situation of being traumatized, people reach out to each other and can hold hands. Race doesn't matter.
Yeah, so I so agree with you. And, you know, as we spoke about that version of Ubuntu, it's about everybody coming together and helping each other out. And it's so nice to see that you've written the story to be able to make people understand that what we have gone through is something that I don't think we want a rerun of as South Africans, but we want to work ways out where, irrespective of what is going on, we want to sit together and work the narrative forward to be able to move people into positive spaces, to be able to find amicable ways to solve the, should we say, the issues that and challenges that we're facing in our country, and work in should we say, in an amicable way to be able to find the necessary versions of getting through this. And I think you'd agree with me. And I think that's what your narrative teaches us, is that irrespective of whatever we're going through, there's always a way to get over it. And I love the word that you've used, which is hope.
Yes, for sure. There's always hope. In the short story that I wrote, I think the overriding factor was that no matter how much a person feels in despair or in the midst of his trauma, there's always that light of hope. And I think we saw that throughout the entire unrest and riots that we had, where there are organizations or people, individuals that stood up, rose up, and lifted all those around them as well out of this whole dark hole and darkness that we found ourselves in. And it was the same for us as well as we traveled through the country. There were times where complete strangers on the side of the road gave advice, gave direction that just made that little bit of difference, that made me feel that, sure, this person actually saved our lives, you know. And I think that was the main message that wanted to be passed across.
Okay, so talk us a little bit through your story, entice us in some way, because I really want our viewers and our listeners to go out there and grab that book, because we want them to actually be, should we say, inspired by all your stories.
I think the short story Anarchy is something that would appeal to anyone. It's an intriguing story. It's got suspense in it. It's got excitement in it. The protagonist in the story is actually a Caucasian guy who's a CEO of a company. So if we lived through those riots and we watched the news and we saw stuff going down, whether it was in Durban with huge distribution centers being looted and things like that, that is the image that I'm taking from that you watched on TV, and I'm portraying that in a different light from an insider's point of view. What did that owner of that distribution center, what did he go through? What was on his mind? How was he dealing with it? How was he trying to safeguard himself? And what did he go through? So not just a view of the public from the outside. I'm giving you an inside view. And I think this story is something that is to everyone. I think it's interesting, and we're hoping to extend on the story later on.
Imraan, I love the idea, because the thing is, you've created a balance in some way. The very fact that you've thought of the CEO, I think is such an amazing aspect, because what happens in many cases, everyone's talking about how it affected the public at large, you know, how everybody felt and how traumatized they were. And I'm so glad that you brought up the CEO and that particular person, and you put yourself in their shoes. So we make people understand literally what it's meant for them, because I mean, that's their daily, should we say, income and their livelihood. And in an instant, it had gotten destroyed and they were left with nothing. And the people that worked for them in turn were left with nothing. So I think it gets people thinking on another level, which I think is absolutely phenomenal. It gets them thinking on another level that should they be doing this again? Because what they didn't think about was the repercussion of the action that was taking place and the type of impact it would have on society on a whole, should we say, because it really affected not just the CEO, as you're saying, but all the people that work for them. Their livelihoods at this moment have stagnated, and we're sitting in a very dire situation. And it's so nice to be able to pick up this little piece and get enticed to think, how can I help out to go out there and help that particular CEO? Because if you really look at it, it's a domino effect. Because that CEO, once he's empowered, he's going to be able to then get those people that he serves livelihoods to and get them going all over again. So I think it's a nice little holistic story that teaches us to reflect back on what had happened and what it is that we can take from it and learn from it and say, what are we going to do going forward in the future?
I think everyone's going to enjoy it.
I so agree with you. What do you think is the most important aspect of yourself as a writer and wanting to get these types of stories out? I know you wrote a second piece as well. I don't know if you want to give us a quick breakdown of it. I really want to entice our viewers to get a hold of this book, and the more we speak about it, the better.
I think the main thing for myself as an aspiring author, because bear in mind this is the first piece that two pieces that I've published ever. So that's awesome. And when I received a response back from Media Inc., I was floored. I said, these people have made a mistake. There's no way they can be accepting a piece from me. So I'm truly honored that they have accepted my pieces. And my intention in writing these pieces is to take myself or take my writing and place the audience in the shoes of somebody who's unique. Because you always want to see life from the point of view of somebody else, whether it's somebody that's a billionaire today or somebody that's a pauper today. You must be able to understand and place yourself in their role, in their life, and understand and see the point of view, their point of view, and the way they see life. The first original piece that was written, I'm not going to speak too much about it.
Okay, so let's just go for a quick break, and then we'll be joining you with that story. We'll carry on with that then.
Thank you.
At Ground Zero, with food essentials, clothing and blankets, fresh water portal trucks, and even on-site navigators who use every cent to better their tomorrow. Become part of our journey to bring relief to all. Go to www.ashrafulaid.org or call us on 011-809-8181. Ashraful Aid, under the auspices of Maulana Suhail Wadi.
These days, I'm more health conscious than ever. So tonight, it's stir fry for dinner, cooked in healthy Helios pure sunflower cooking oil. Helios is pure sunflower goodness, packed with omega-6. That's good for your heart, and is approved as part of the Heart and Stroke Foundation eating plan.
Dinner's ready.
Helios, pure sunflower cooking oil. A healthy family is a happy one.
Africa. Did you know a sponsored water well and borehole allows children to go back to school, empowers communities, and is a means of Sadaqah Jariyah? There are many villages in Africa and Afghanistan that are in need of water wells and boreholes. Sponsor a water well in Africa at 14,500 Rand, or a borehole in Africa and Afghanistan at 49,500 Rand. Call Africa Muslims Agency on 011-834-8685 or donate at Africa Muslims Agency. .co.za. Africa Muslims Agency, inspiring the spirit of giving.
Abu, why don't you loosen your belt a bit more?
But why now?
Well, it's very tight, blocking air to your brain.
Haju, this is only a start. I need to tighten up a bit more. Funds are tight and the cost of living is high.
Funds are not tight. It's your haram insurance which is tightening our barakat.
Okay, Haju. I will call my insurance friend tomorrow.
Maybe I must tighten up on my cooking from now on too.
No, Haju, we don't need to tighten up. It's okay. Look, I'm even throwing away my belt.
Don't tighten your belt. Change your insurance. Leaving Riba Insurance is easier than you think. Call Amana IFS for all your personal and commercial takaful needs. 0861 786 393. Amana. Leave Riba for good. Amana IFS is a registered financial services provider.
I've been waiting.
Gift of the Needy is working tirelessly to bring relief and hope to families burdened by poverty and distress. Our ongoing projects include aid to those affected and infected by COVID-19. Donate now. Standard Bank, Gift of the Needy, Zakah account 272-327-654. Visit our website on www.giftoftheneedy.com. Call 031-271-3102. Gift of the Needy, bringing ease to those in need.
Salam Media, a global voice for humanity.
Welcome back to the Mid-Morning Show, and we're in conversation with the author, and now we're going to say authors, of Taxi Through Mzansi, a very, should we say, interesting book. And there's a lot of stories in there that are so relative that, you know, we as South Africans can relate it, but also learn something from it. And joining me with our first author, Imraan Garnie, is Muhammed Ali Rahiman. Let me just tell you a little bit about him. He's a scholar who strives to know himself. His personal experience has taught him that each of us are gifted with unique talents, which we can use to solve problems in our lives and in our communities. And then also, you know, he talks about solving personal problems and how to overcome our frustrations and in the communities. And he also has a desire to make the world a better place. So we're going to be chatting to both these phenomenal gentlemen, first-time authors. But I must say, for first-time authors, reading a little bit about what they have written in narrative is really, should we say, phenomenal. So a very good start. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you so much for joining me back again on the show.
Salam.
Muhammad Ali, thank you so much for joining us. We're still in conversation with Brother Imraan. How are you doing this morning? Muhammad, there we go. Do we have sound?
Appreciate you having me here today.
I think we're very excited to chat to you also about your narrative, but we're just going to finish off.
So, Auntie Nafisa, I can hear you.
Okay, lovely. I can hear you too. So let's go back, Imraan. We were just chatting before the break about, should we say, your second story. And you were going to give us a little bit of a bite of it so that we can get our viewers enticed into running to get a hold of that book in a hurry. Tell us a little bit about what should we say, inspired you to write that second story?
Okay, so the second story is basically my take on giving hope to the public, in the sense that especially when it comes to financial status, that it doesn't matter where you are today. Tomorrow, there's always hope, and I wanted to pass on that message of hope when it comes to the second story. The protagonist in the second story is a guy who had been through every experience known to man in terms of poverty and strife, and the idea that of giving him hope and lifting him out of this, and at the same time there are subtle messages in each section of that particular short story, messages that if a person had been through drug abuse, if a person had been physical abuse, these are common things that we don't speak about, and we associate them purely with regards to financial standing. So you'd only become a drug addict if you were a pauper or if you didn't have money or this sort of stereotypes. I tried to break through all of that and touch on relevant topics. So they're very subtle hints. I don't go in depth into it. But I think at the end of the day, these are relevant things that we need to speak about more, especially in our communities where these things are kept are swept under the carpet, and we keep quiet about these sort of situations. I think we need to speak more about it, and I think it's a very gentle short story.
Yeah, but I like the idea. I like it because it's light-hearted yet impactful, and that's what we need. Is people to get, should we say, inspired through a light-hearted version of things, because you don't also want to, go hard on them. And I think that gives them that, should we say, food for thought. But let's go now on to Muhammad Ali. Muhammad, thank you so much for joining us this morning on the show. A warm welcome to you. Talk to us a little bit about yourself. We know you always wanting to go that extra mile to develop your self-worth and, of course, create a better environment for others as well. Is Muhammad with us, or has he?
I am here. Auntie Nafisa, can you hear me?
Okay.
Auntie Nafisa, can you hear me?
Muhammad, the sound seems to be quite bad. Getting a bad signal from you.
Oh, terrible. We've got load shed. Okay. Now, mark me for that. Assalamu alaikum, Auntie Nafisa and Uncle Imraan. And I really appreciate.
I'm smiling because he's.
I really appreciate you having me. Forgive me. I mean, this is part. It's Indian heritage, and it's these bad habits I've been taught. So please maaf me, because I don't think I'm going to manage to learn this lesson today.
Oh my goodness, no, I don't think it's a bad habit. I think it's the respect level, but that's fine. Thank you so much for joining us this morning, and we're so looking forward to hear about your contribution to this particular book. I think it's a very effective book because everything that's in there is written in such a light-hearted way, but it gets you thinking in many directions. So talk to us about your story and what enticed you to write about what you wrote. Give us a narrative of your story, a short little breakdown.
My story features a boy from Johannesburg who has dark skin, and he is confronted with feelings of inferiority. And the events that take place in his life, bit by bit, help him to appreciate his heritage.
Okay, yes, so that sounds great. Give us more insight into it.
So it's based on my personal experiences. As I grew up, I had this feeling that having fair skin, being fair in complexion, is superior to having darker skin. And there were incidents in my life. For instance, there was when I was about 10, I went Eid shopping with my mum. And my mum, I wanted to buy a black shirt. And she asked me not to buy a black shirt because wearing black would make me look blacker.
Okay.
And I had family members who would often admire, their own fair skins. And I just, it would hurt me to the point that I wanted to have my skin bleached at some point during teenagehood. This is something I've come to learn is, common in our Indian community. And it was a part of my journey in life to overcome this. But why I wrote about this was because I was writing about my heritage, and where there is so much beauty in Indian culture, in terms of the community, in terms of the love, and in terms of the philosophy as well. There's also this aspect of the racial prejudice, and not only racial prejudice, but just discrimination in the caste systems. So I wanted to capture all of that when I wrote this.
I'm so glad to that you did not feel shy, or should we say shunned away, and not talk about your own life experience and bringing it into play into this narrative. And I'll tell you why. Sometimes people relate a lot more to a reality story, to know that this particular person has gone through it. I'm also experiencing it. This is what they tell themselves, and get to understand what you've gone through and how you've overcome it. And that's what we need to know is, how have you learned to deal with it? Because a lot of people are facing similar situations out there. And I'm glad that you brought that particular aspect out, because as you were saying, it's discrimination in a sense. And we need to understand that we need to start respecting each other, where each person has value attached to them. And I think that's important.
And Nafisa, you've captured the essence over there. It's about learning that we have value attached to us. And for me, this is one of the most important realizations of my life, that we need to identify what we love doing. I personally believe that Allah has put us here on this earth with a particular purpose. And it's something that we have talents to achieve, to make this world a better place. And after you identify that and you realize the value you can add, then things like your skin color just don't matter as much. But there are a few other realizations I've come to as well that have helped me to come to terms with this. So one of them is that you need to identify what the most important aspect of yourself is. And that is definitely in part the purpose that you're here to achieve, but also that when you look, we sometimes have the misfortune of attending the funeral of a loved one. And as that loved one is lying, on the floor, the mayat of your loved one, you realize that the body is still there, but the most important part of them is gone. It's not there anymore. And for me, the most important aspect of us is our consciousness. That is what gives us life. And that consciousness is even with us when we sleep, when we dream at night. And that consciousness, that intelligence, is the most important aspect for me. It's what gives us our personalities. Our bodies are just a carriage, a vehicle for that consciousness.
I like that you bring that aspect up. What I want to bring up, Muhammad, is the fact that I love the idea that you've talked about value and self-worth. And I think a lot of people are struggling with that. And so it's like, as you said, irrespective of color or creed, it's important to understand that each one of us has some form of self-worth and importance in this world. And that, as you said, we need to determine our purpose. And once we find that, it's about appreciating the purposes that people give in life. And I think that's what your story pens out. It also makes people understand that they're not alone, that there are other people going through similar issues. But I think you're trying to entice them, to make them understand that it's okay to be a different, darker or lighter or whatever, because that doesn't make you the person you are within. And that's what matters. It comes from within the heart. It's the type of person you are on a holistic level.
Nafisa, you said that so beautifully. And I've heard you mentioning the word Ubuntu before. I mean, like in this interview, but as well as, at other points in time. And I think the concept of Ubuntu captures precisely this idea that in this world, there is no single person who is capable of doing everything. We each have particular things that we're strong at, and we have other things that we're not strong at. And and we depend on each other because none of us can do everything. And we need to realize that we are here. I mean, we're not just here by coincidence. We are here with a very particular set of talents that we can use to add value to the world. That is the aspect of Ubuntu. We are part of a greater whole.
Oh, of course, I agree with you there. And I mean, I always say that my strength could be somebody else's weakness, and my weakness could be somebody else's strengths. So it's about defining that and coming together and creating a better quality of life, which I so agree with you. And I think this is what your story relates as well. It teaches us many an aspect of life to be able to look back and ask ourselves, how can we make things better from where they are? And how can we better the quality not just of ourselves and our lives, but the others around us as well. And it's about creating that unity. And I think that's very important. We as South Africans, I think, are good at doing that, especially through disasters, as we were hearing from Brother Imraan's story. His story taught us as well how we can come together, how we can pull together, and how we can create those support structures for each other. And what's so nice is it's about building each other up and not breaking each other down. And I think that's where yours and his story comes together to be able to create this collaboration, should we say, of a message to say, let's go out there, South Africa, and let's make this place a better space for all of us with a better quality of life, but also with the word respect involved.
100%. With that respect is essential to creating that unity, but it's also it helps us realize the importance of our diversity, because the reason why there's so many different types of people on earth is because each of us come with our unique strengths that we can add into our society. I mean, if everyone, for instance, only wanted to be a grocer, then who would be the haircutters? I mean, the barbers. Who would give us massages? So that is what we really need to be respecting, that all of us contribute in some way in our society.
Yes, most definitely. And each one of us should do it with dignity, because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter which job you do. It's done with dignity. And every single one of us, as I said, our purpose can't be the same. And I'm glad that you brought that up, so people understand that we need to start understanding each other and getting that barrier divide out of our lives so that we live a better quality of life with each other together.
Beautiful. Thank you for bringing that aspect out. That is something that all of us need to understand so that we can come to peace with ourselves and understand where we fit in our communities. And then we'll be able to grow in order to be able to serve the world in the best way that we possibly can.
Most definitely. Brother Imraan, coming back to you. What is it that you would like our viewers to know about you today? What would you like to leave us with? What sort of message you think is the most imperative?
I think the most important message that I can pass across as an author is that, like Brother Muhammad is saying, that we're all unique. At the same time, often enough, we feel that our experiences are unique. But there's a lot of the time when there's many people in the same country going through the same things that we are going through. And if you see it, if you hear about it, or if you read about it, then you automatically associate with that story or that narrative, because you feel in your heart, I've been through that. I've experienced it. And I think the main message that I want to pass across in all my writing is that people are not alone. Your experience might be unique to you, but the experience itself, it's not unique. There's many people going through the same thing that you are, and there's always hope. I think that's
Yes,
the main thing. There's
I love that you bring that word up, because many people have given up on that due to the COVID-19, the riots, the issues that have been going on around us, and of course your everyday relative challenges that you face. But it's nice to see that you pun on that particular word, because that particular word, hope, is what keeps us going every single day. It's what motivates us to be able to overcome the type of challenges we face and move ourselves into a better space. Muhammad, from your side, what would you like to leave us with?
So I want to add on what Uncle Imraan has said, that we all share our, experiences, and in terms of finding this hope, we all can feel that there's moments in our lives where we all feel like we're worthless, and we wonder what is our point in this world. And to answer the question for ourselves, we need to find out what we love doing, because that will help us understand what purpose we're supposed to be serving over here. We need to find out what we're good at, and we then need to find out how we can use that to make the world a better place. And in that process, we will find the purpose of our lives. We will find joy in doing what we're doing, because we're doing what we love, and we will make this world a better place.
I agree with you. It's about finding that common ground, and I think that's your message. Let's find the common ground. Let's break those barriers, and let's start building up, because that's what it's about. And we're going to start show the rest of the world what South Africans can do. And we've already shown them in many directions, but through the hope from Imraan and through the diversity from yourself, I would say Taxi Through Mzansi is going to teach people many things, and I'm hoping that this book can go throughout the world so that people can understand what South Africa is doing, that everybody else can learn from. So thank you so much for joining me on the mid-morning show. I'm really honored to have been able to, and I know you're all first-time authors, but your stories are so phenomenal and so impactful. It gets us thinking in many directions, and it's nice to see that we can entice people, and I always say this on my show, in better spaces, in better places, through narrative. And many people will talk to us with life coaches and things like that, but I always believe that narrative is also important. Sometimes you can pick up a book and just read that small little piece that you guys have written and get some form of motivation for the day. So thank you so much. Wishing you nothing but the best going forward, and I'm definitely looking forward to getting my hands on that book.
Thank you so much.
Jazakallah, Auntie Nafisa. We sincerely appreciate all your du'as. Ameen summa ameen. And thank you for giving us the privilege of talking with you on your show.
It's only been a pleasure, Muhammad. Imraan, Jazakallah so much for enticing us about your stories. You got us thinking about the word hope, and I think that means a lot. It's a small word, but of course with a lot of connotation to it, and it's a very important word that's going to change our lives in many directions. So Jazakallah to both of you, and we're hoping to catch up with you real soon at the launch. Take care. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Alaikum salam.
So that was Brother Imraan Garnie and Muhammad Ali talking to us. They're authors, first-time authors from the book Taxi Through Mzansi, definitely enticing us to think about, the relative issues we face every day in our lives, and how to, of course, deal with it. And they've definitely given us some really good food for thought. So try and get a hold of that book. It's a really interesting one, and I think it's so relative that you're going to really enjoy it, but at the same time, get going on positive things in your life. Stay with us. We'll be back with you in an instant.